Hello, Natalie. Welcome to Chasing Hard Podcast, where we talk about hard things that I feel like God calls us to sometimes that we would never sign up for, we never raise our hands for, and say, "Yeah, here I am. Let's do this." And so I am excited to be able to talk with you today. I know that you're a life coach. Is that correct?
Yep.
And speaker, I'm assuming.
I actually have not spoken at any
Okay.
events yet.
Okay.
I haven't put
Yet.
myself out there in that way yet because life has just been too chaotic to
I
try to
gotcha.
figure that out.
So, podcast. I didn't find a podcast. Are you a podcaster yet? I'm
Not
using the word
yet.
yet.
There's
Yet.
there's discussion about us trying to get
Okay.
that started.
I love it.
I had a huge transition this last year with my oldest daughter moving to Tennessee for college. First one out and a long ways away. So I just kind of
Mm,
took the
I
last
get you.
probably 6, 7 months off basically. And
Girl, I get that.
yeah, but it was
My,
good because I've been coaching for so long that the Lord brought so many great
okay,
ideas of things that He wants me to do now that I'm getting back into the routine.
that's
So,
awesome. How long have you been coaching?
so since 2016
Okay.
formally, mentoring some years before that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's so cool. I had my youngest son, and he's 20, he was 25, move. So I'm in Kentucky. He moved to California. Life
Okay.
just totally,
Yes,
yes. So I feel
big
you.
transition.
I know. So I definitely feel what you're going through there. So, from what I gather, let me just read what I gather that Natalie helps you overcome anger so you can be a fun, present, joyful wife and mama.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I'm sure there's a story. I'm sure there's a reason why you do that. So
hmm
can you share with us the story?
Absolutely. Yeah, going right along with what your podcast is about and what you're trying to do. Never in my wildest dreams would I've ever thought that my career at this point in my life would be helping moms work through destructive anger and burnout. Mainly because it was such a huge struggle of mine. And who would I be to help somebody work through it themselves, right?
Mm,
So when the story goes, when, excuse me, I my parents were pretty destructive and loud in their anger when I was a child. Um, that was my story. Many people's is different with their parents, but mine were both loud. And there was yelling, door slamming, you know, that type of stuff. And that's
sure.
how I learned to process anger. Um, Fast forward to today, I always like to put that plug in for my parents. They've definitely grown and matured in the Lord, and that's not the case. And we have a very sweet and blessed relationship
Oh,
today. But yeah, so I took that knowledge of processing anger into my marriage and new motherhood.
mm,
And when we, by the time my oldest was about 2 years old, you would literally find her and I on the floor both screaming at each other, like both of us during 2-year-old tantrums. Um, it's not something I am proud of. It's not something that's easy to talk about, but granted, I've talked about this so much and for so long, it might come off like it's
sure.
not a big deal, but it is a big deal.
Mhm.
I was very abusive, screaming in rage, yelling, squeezing her to like little bruises on her arm, spanking her too hard, threatening and belittling her. It was a very scary time of both of our lives. And I hated it. I hated it. I didn't want to be that way. I loved her and I wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to be her mom
Mhm.
and was excited to be a mom, had all these plans of like, homeschool and fun activities. And this is where I was at. And I didn't know if there was a way for me to change. Um, so, I'd pray about it and just things weren't changing. We brought her daughter, her sister, our other daughter, brought her home from the hospital about 3 years later. And I remember one night, Enya's tantrums were just, excuse my oldest, her tantrums were so epic because I couldn't help her figure them out and they just make
Mm,
me angry.
mhm.
And my husband Mike is putting her to bed one night and I'm nursing Sky and I can hear this tantrum just building and building and I'm getting more and more angry and all of a sudden I just scream at the top of my lungs for Enya to shut up. And I'm in a room with the door closed. Enya couldn't hear me anyways, because she wouldn't be able to hear me over her
Right.
tantrum. And Sky stops nursing and she looks up at me with this horrific little baby face and just starts crying. And I'm like, something's got to change. Like, we
Mm.
can't keep doing this. And obviously, I can't change. So let's seek help for Enya. So we took Enya to a therapist
Mm-hmm.
and she observed her and she observed us. And
Mm-hmm.
then she met with us alone and my husband and I, and she's like, Enya's perfectly normal for her age and development. I'm like, you're not home with her. Of course, she's great for you. She's great for anyone who's not mom,
You're right.
And she's like, I recognize that's how, I understand that, but Natalie, you should be in here to see me. And so I was just like, wait, what? There's
Mm-hmm.
no hope for me. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I really took it to heart. I was actually
Mm-hmm.
very grateful that someone was telling me there was hope and that I could change.
Sure.
So I went, she was a psychoanalyst. I don't believe she was Christian. At least our sessions weren't Christian. And I learned a lot. I was there for 4 years. I did a lot of understanding of, how psychology and
Mm-hmm.
patterns and stuff that were built in my family history, but I still left with the patterns of yelling at my kids, screaming, just still some destructive behavior. It had started to ease, but it wasn't healthy yet,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, so by that time I had our third child, our third girl.
Third
We have three
girl.
girls.
Wow.
Yeah, all girls.
Okay. Okay.
They're currently 12, 16, and 19.
Oh.
Um, and so yeah, the Lord just kept pursuing me and didn't give up on me.
Mm.
So awesome, right?
Yep. Yes, that's what he
And
does.
I know, and just kept growing me. And so eventually I was led to life coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I had started a blog and just wanted to help moms
Mm-hmm.
organize their life. And so I was like, oh, I'll go to a life coaching school to figure
Yep.
out how to help them. I learned so much in that experience. And I think the biggest takeaway was we had to spend time with the Lord. It was part of our curriculum
Mm.
to make sure we were spending that time with the Lord on a consistent basis. Because I'll never forget my instructor saying, if you don't know the Lord, you can't help
Mm-hmm.
him. You
Oh,
can't
yeah.
be a servant for him.
Right.
You have to be able to hear his voice. You have to be able to discern and the Holy Spirit has to lead you, right? And so if you aren't in that place with him, he can't do that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned to listen, I learned to process, started understanding all of that and grew my relationship in the Lord. So I got my certification and it was about a year after that. A friend and I were up talking one night and she had a podcast. I'm not sure actually not sure if she still has it. And but we were up talking about our motherhood journeys and how we both had anger
Mm-hmm.
challenges and how we'd overcome most of that. And she's like, you need to get on my podcast and talk about this. So
That's so cool.
I wasn't coaching anyone at that moment. I was actually
Okay.
discouraged because
It's
I hadn't
hard.
had any, it
It's
was.
hard. I
I
know.
was mentoring some people with some things, but the coaching
Mm-hmm.
practice hadn't really taken off
Yes.
yet.
Yeah.
So after that podcast, I started having moms reaching out,
I'm
what I
sure.
need to work with you, right?
I'm sure.
I would say that the biggest growth happened once I started helping other moms
Mm-hmm.
because I had to then stay accountable to what I
Yep.
was teaching.
Yeah.
And then I was also learning through coaching these moms how to help people better, right?
Right.
Hearing their experiences,
Right.
we would suggest, let's try this, let's do this. And then it just eventually just came into the largest grew through this program. And
Wow.
it's
That's
been
so cool.
incredible to see the life transformations of these moms as they
Oh, I'm
walk through the
sure.
program and coaching. So
Um, I love that you said you never saw yourself doing this because you had your own issues. And like that is part of the whole chasing hard premise. Like he uses, and we know this, that he uses our messes to help other people.
yes,
But we somehow think that that means that we have to be in this place where he can
right.
use us, but it's not. I mean, it's we need each other. And
Yeah.
so not only are you helping other women, but because of that you're getting things back as well. And so I definitely like that you said that, and I also appreciate your tenacity with sticking with life coaching because I am a certified life coach, and that never really took off for me. But I feel like that was a God thing as well. I mean, it just what has
Right.
transpired has been where I'm supposed to be. So that is really cool. And then lastly, for you to, it's hard to talk about things that we don't like about ourselves, that we want to change about ourselves and our behavior, whatever. And mothering, that's so personal because we want to be good mothers. And so
Mhm.
to go public, shall we say, with your
Yeah.
story takes a lot of bravery and courage, and to follow through with counseling. Um, a lot of people don't have the courage to do that. So
Yeah.
hats off to you for doing that. And I'm assuming you're like, so do you think when your other daughters came along, you were in a better place? Or were you still working through a lot of stuff when your second daughter was born?
Yeah, I would say that there definitely wasn't as much destructive
Mhm.
behavior as I continued to grow.
Right.
There would still be outbursts occasionally, but
Mm-hmm.
I started to learn, a thing that was really suppressing and keeping me in that destructive place was the guilt and shame that I continued to
Mm-hmm.
carry.
Which is
And
a
what I,
cycle. It feeds
yes,
off of, I mean, it is
yeah,
bad.
and what I recognize and what I teach my mamas too is we have to take that to the cross and we have to look up
Mhm.
at the Lord and trust that He will take it and make it
Yeah.
nothing.
Yes.
And when we continue to hold on to it, it's basically us looking up at Jesus on the cross saying, what you did wasn't good enough.
Was enough. Right.
It wasn't enough for
Mm-hmm.
me. I still have to hold this burden. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not true. That's a
Right.
total lie from the enemy.
It
And when we
is.
can release that guilt and shame, we can go, yep, I made a mistake, but the
Mm-hmm.
Lord is going to use this mistake to grow me and my children in a new way. And
Right.
so that's what we talk about. That's how we go forward thinking. Because I still make mistakes.
Sure. Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I still like will snap at one of my kids
Right.
or do something I'm not proud of. And I'm like,
Right.
oops, need to
Yeah.
recover there, work through that. But I don't hold on to it anymore. And I don't let
Right.
it keep me down. I remember the
I
nights
love
I would
that.
just go to bed, just crying, like, I'm not going to yell tomorrow. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to be abusive. And the next morning, first
Yep.
thing,
Like that didn't work,
they're
did it?
fighting.
I
I'm
know.
like on them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So I have
so
this. Go
it's
ahead.
been, yeah, it's just been really, it's been really cool to be able to recognize that letting go of that guilt and shame, which
Right.
is not easy. I mean, it's easy to
No,
talk
it's not.
about, but I know it's not easy. It's a
No,
burden that we have to process and work through.
for sure. Um, so I mean, I have a lot of regrets about my mothering. There were times when I was inappropriately angry. That's not one of my major issues that I had to deal with. There are plenty, and there are plenty that I feel the shame and the guilt about, and that I've owned with them, that I've owned with God, and going from here, it's better. But I do remember I homeschooled my kids. I do remember this one time. My oldest had some undiagnosed issues. And my goal as a homeschool mom was once they got once they got to the point where they could read, like that was a big load off. Like, yes,
Hmm.
they're reading,
I
yes.
remember that.
Uh, and so with my daughter, we were reading. I think we were reading this Little House books, Little House on the Prairie books, and they were for small, younger children. So they weren't the original books. It was a picture book of Little House on the Prairie, and I loved the books. And so my daughter was stumbling along reading, and um, she got stuck on the word "the" every time we got to the word "the." And at one point, I was like, I couldn't. Like I was done. I said, "It's the. It was the here. It was the there. It was the. It will always be the." And I threw the book up. I said, "We're done." And I felt
Mhm.
so guilty about that. Um,
Mhm.
so even though I didn't consistently have issues, like we all do, we
Yeah.
all
Oh,
we
yeah.
all get angry and say and do things that we don't want to say and do, especially when it comes to mothering. So that's great that you're doing that, and that helping them get rid of the shame which keeps you in the cycle,
Hmm.
for sure.
It's also helping them recognize too that we have to make these mistakes to teach our children
It's true.
how to overcome
It's
these
true.
things. And so I'll have a client be like, "Ah, I blew it again." I'm like, "Yes.
Yeah.
What did you learn from it? How did you recover? What do you
Right.
think your kids learned from this
Yeah.
experience?"
And
Because
to
if
be
we don't
even,
ever mess up,
you're
they're
right.
going to grow up thinking, I mean, I have clients who come to me and they're like, my parents never got upset and I don't understand what's wrong with me. And I'm like, okay, so
Mm,
actually your parents did process emotion, but not in front of
right,
you, or they were passive aggressive or whatever it
right,
is.
right,
And so they didn't get to experience how do we work through these emotions. And it's okay that I have these emotions.
right. Yes, because for some reason, anger and sadness or whatever, they're the bad emotions that we're not supposed to feel. God created us with all of our emotions. I mean, it
He
says,
has them.
yes, be angry and sin not. I mean, there is anger. We have anger. It's just
Mhm.
what do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? And where do we go with that? It's just hard because parenting is hard. When your kids are small, parenting, it's when your kids are teenagers, parenting is hard. There
Right.
are all the phases. It's hard. So we can't be perfect. And I once had a counselor tell me that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be a good enough parent. Like each child is different, and you just need to be good enough for that child. Like whatever that child needs, you just be good enough for that child, and not in a slouching type of way. Like it's
Right.
good enough. I'm striving to be good enough for whatever it is that particular child needs. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I saw your prayer of restoration for any relationship. Like that's really cool. How did that come about?
Um, there's definitely been challenges, like we all experience challenging relationships, right? And I've had quite a few where even some narcissistic, sociopathic people in my life who I've
Yes.
had to learn how to let go, move on, grow.
Yeah.
And so there's been that. That's probably a big piece of that one. I wrote that one a while ago. And then also just being able to, like we were talking about, being able to have peace with the fact that we do make mistakes ourselves and we need restoration from the Lord for those relationships. I tell moms it's never too late. I mean, even if your kiddos have left the house, it's never too late to go
It's
back
true.
to them.
It's
And if,
true.
yeah, if you communicate to them,
Mm-hmm.
I there's things I wish I could change, but I can't.
Right.
And so I'm asking for forgiveness for these things.
Right.
Or like my oldest knows our relationship is so beautiful now. Man, it's so something I would never have expected thinking back to those 2-year-old tantrums of ours
Mm-hmm.
to, she's in college, she calls me, she depends on me like
That's
in
sweet.
a healthy way. She wants
Right.
my
Right.
advice, this and that. And it's sweet. And she wants me around.
That's a big
So
one.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. I just
Yeah.
visited her a couple of weeks ago and I was like, I'm not no, I don't want to be in the way. And she's like, Mom, I want you
Um,
around. I'm like, it's
right.
music to a mother's ears. Like you
It
want your
is.
kiddos. I mean, this is a huge testimony to what I've been through and what I'm helping my
Mm-hmm.
moms through, right? And I told her, I'm like, it means so much because I don't want you to need me anymore, but to be
Mm-hmm.
wanted by you is
Mm-hmm.
really special,
It
right?
is
So,
for sure. For sure that I
um,
can, yeah, I relate to that for sure because there are times when they don't, but there are
yeah,
times when they do, and it's really cool. And
yeah.
I have, because none of my kids, they're all adults now. I just recently, and some of my kids are more, I have three, two boys and a girl. Some are more open to the heart to heart talks than others, but I still say what I need to say and
Yeah.
know that I may get something back from them and I may not. But Psalm 139 is like one of my favorite books of the Bible.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Just yeah, just because he knew even before we took our first breath. And so someone, my counselor, has to remind me every now and then, when I do go see her, which is not as often as it used to be, that God chose me to be their mother. And like
Hmm.
he knew how I would parent. He knew what situations in the marriage and the situations we would encounter that to me were like so incredibly harmful, but he still chose me to be the mother. And so I said that to all three of them. And one of them actually did thank me for saying that. And he's very gracious and probably the most self-aware of them all. But that just meant a lot to me that he actually listened to me and then responded. That doesn't
Mm,
always happen. They'll listen, but they don't always respond. But that
yeah.
was, and they're on their own journey They
Right.
have to figure things out as well. I mean, I can't heal them as much
No,
as I
and
would
that's
love to, but it's
something
their
I
own
talk
journey.
about too,
Mhm.
is, you we take on all this guilt, like, oh, I totally messed up with my kids. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, but that's part of their journey
It
too.
is.
And the Lord's not surprised. He's not
Right.
shocked this
No,
just happened. And
exactly.
he's going to use this. He's going to use
Yes.
it in some way. So
Yeah.
continue to put your trust and faith in
I
him,
love that.
and walk with him to see what happens, and pray over your children.
I love that. And I can just see what a huge ministry that is because of the topic, and we're all mothers and have these feelings. But your personality and the way I can just feel the Holy Spirit as you talk about these things, the passion that He has given you for it. What a blessing I'm sure you are to all the women that you walk with. That's pretty incredible. Do you find that you do you work with all ages of women and different parenting, or do you find a
Yeah,
specific
so
group?
I have had, most of my clients have had children probably in elementary years.
Okay.
I've had a couple with teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm actually, as I'm coming back into my practice and updating some things, I'm definitely going to have more teaching on teenagers now that
Okay.
I'm experiencing
Yes.
this. And so I've had some more experience and understanding on how to help moms through that
Mm,
personally. So I am sure in the near future there will be some more teen moms. I actually
yeah.
wrote my list about it, and I had a few. Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, wow. That's
Because
cool.
teenagers are, yeah, a totally different
Yep.
ball game.
It really is.
And I used to be kind of upset. In fact, I think I've even mentioned it in older podcasts. I had a woman once tell me, I think Enya was throwing a tantrum in town or something. She's like, you just wait till she gets to, her teen years. It's going to be right back to where you're at right now. I'm like, don't tell me that. Don't speak that over
Right.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not that I want negative, we shouldn't be thinking negative over people,
Right.
but we not must realize that it is a new transition for our kids, and we're walking into, in your experience, you understand this.
Mm,
I know that the challenge that I started to recognize I needed to work through is we go from telling our kids what to do, teaching them what to do when they're little, do we have to learn how to walk beside them. We're no longer able to
right.
tell them what to do. We need
Right.
to help guide them
Mm-hmm.
and help walk through the things when they make mistakes. and
Yes.
and sometimes we have to pull out discipline and consequences, but
Right.
it looks different than when they're 8,
For sure.
5, 3,
For
whatever.
sure.
And the more we can understand how we process emotions now, like or moms when the kids are younger, the easier it will be for them when the kids get older.
That's true.
Not that the journey these years, as far as teenager years or teenager years, but for
Yes.
you to process and work through it
Yeah.
will look differently
It
than
will.
what it looked like, and each child, as you know, is so
Unique.
different.
Yes, for sure. I know I think I see a lot of moms especially, and obviously now that I'm past the active raising of children, I see a lot of I don't want to call them helicopter mothers, but it kind of fits. They don't allow, I mean, the time when their kids are teenagers is that's actually the time to let them make mistakes
Yeah,
under the safety and protection. So I see them like maybe come down even more so on the teenager to keep a tighter rein on them, and
right,
they're not learning how to make decisions and get to know that decisions have consequences. And I think
yeah,
that's really sad. They're not only cheating the child, but they're cheating themselves because that's a growing process as well for the parent and for the relationship.
right.
Um, I think that's just a little sad.
It is sad. I think a part of that, just being in that phase right now, is just how scary the world feels
It,
at the
oh
moment.
my gosh.
And I
Yes.
know it was scary when I was a teen. My mom had to
Yeah.
deal with that. I mean, she couldn't even locate me back then, right?
Right. Right. I had
But
payphones. Like there was yeah.
I know, it's so
Yeah.
funny. But at the same time, there's just so much information, and we can get so bombarded by fear.
Yes.
But at that same place, like you're saying, we have to trust the Lord in that
Yes.
journey too, and just recognize
Right.
they are His, they are not ours.
Yes.
we got to borrow them
Absolutely.
for a while.
Absolutely.
And
And
yeah, so it's important to give them that freedom, and
it
it
really
is a
is.
difficult balance.
It's difficult. Even when they're out of the house and they're adults making their own decisions, you don't always agree with their decisions, but you
Yeah,
don't get a say in their decisions
no,
now. They're not under your roof. And so that's really when you get to trust God and you pray a lot. I thought I prayed a lot for my kids as teenagers. I pray a lot for them
I've
to
heard
walk on their
that parenting,
own.
yeah, parenting begins when they leave your house.
Pretty, yeah. I've not heard that, but yes, I will definitely
Oh,
testify to that. But
oh
it's
man,
different. I mean, it's not
it's
as
different.
demanding
Yeah,
as those sleepless nights as baby, but each phase has a new
it
set of
does.
opportunities, we'll call them.
Yep, for
So
sure.
tell me about your trigger tracker.
Yeah. So the trigger tracker is basically a form to help you start processing,
Okay.
right? So you blew it, you made a mistake.
Okay.
Let's go back over that mistake and start breaking it down. Why were you like this? What was
Mm,
going on for you in the moment? Were you hangry? Were you PMSing? Was there something big? Did you just do
right.
something on social media that caused anxiety? Who knows what it could be? But if we
Right.
don't ever stop and give ourselves that time to kind of process through,
Yeah.
we're just going to keep going, right? We just keep going and we never stop. And that's the thing. I want you to stop and process what are these things that are causing you to get so upset about.
Hmm.
And I recommend if you're first starting out with the trigger tracker, start with triggers that are common for you. Like little ones, moms with littles, it's probably going to be bedtime or morning routines, right?
Right.
So take the bedtime routine and break that down
Mm,
if you get triggered at that time. And so what it does is you're calling out your actions, you're confessing, basically. You are also um, asking the Lord, you're praying. It prompts you to pray in there and talks about what do you
mm,
want this to look like? What would a healthier way to look like do this again?
right.
To kind of help start laying that foundation. So you're kind of putting it out there. I want this to go this way next time. Not that you're going to be perfect, but you're
Right.
going to create more
That's good.
awareness about it. You
Awareness.
just
And I think that's a
bringing
thing.
awareness.
Awareness. Yeah.
It's huge, key.
Yeah. And I can't believe how fast this went. You were
I
a
know.
delight to talk with, and I just got the warning that my time is almost up. So just what would you say to the woman struggling right now?
Mhm.
What would you say to her?
That you don't have to struggle alone. I
That's good.
remember being so afraid that if
That's good.
anybody knew how I was treating Anya, that they would come take her away from me. And you need to reach out, especially if you're feeling that way. You've got to find somebody, whether it's
Hmm.
uh, someone in your church or a good
Hmm.
friend. Don't be afraid or ashamed of what's going
Right.
on. Talk to someone, whether it's me, whoever. You reach out and connect with somebody and start talking about it so you can start facing this
Yes.
and working through it. And it's never too late. Never too late. If you are
Oh,
still alive and you're breathing, it's never too
never
late
too
to
late.
make things right with your family.
Right. That's great. Um, you are a delight to talk with. I can't believe how fast the time went. And so in the show notes, I will put all of your information. And
Mhm.
I think your assistant said something about there was a trigger tracker that um, I forget that there's
Yeah,
access to.
so you
Yes.
can go to
Okay.
nataliehixson.com/chasing hard to get your free trigger tracker download.
Gotcha. That sounds
Yep.
good. Well, it was fun. You are a delight.
Yeah.
And I hope maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I
Yes.
totally appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. We will see you next time on Chasing Hard.